Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for RP Strength. Today's video is going to answer the question of what are the optimal body fat percentage ranges to create your best muscle growth environment. Ooh, salacious. The goal here is to gain as much muscle as possible, short of trading a genie the entire life history of the earth for 1 more gram of muscle. Not possible, but as good of an effort as you can make on muscle gain in a given bulking phase, and then asking the question of where should my body fat be at least at the start of that phase, probably just a few percentage points at the end of that phase, so that I get the best possible results for muscle gain. For this, I have given you 4 ranges of body fat. I will term them ultra lean, pretty lean, kind of fluffy, and full in honor of Kyriakos Grizzly, of course. Ultra lean, for males, that's about 5 to 10%. Pretty lean for males, that's 10 to 15%. Kind of fluffy is 15 to 25% for males. No offense, kind of fluffy males. And full is 25% plus for males. For females, for the 3.5 of you that still watch this channel, lean is actually somewhere between ultra lean is between 17 and 23% or so. Pretty lean is 23 to 30%. Kind of fluffy is 30 to 40%. And full for females is 40% plus. Yeah, there's some wiggle room in these, but stick with me. I promise this shit'll make sense. So we're going to go through each one of these 4 ranges of body fat, and I'm going to give you the upsides and downsides. Well, downsides first, as I always like to do. Downsides first of being in that range for your bulking, and then the upsides. And then after we list all those downsides and upsides, give you guys a lot of food for thought, I'm going to teach you which one of those to pick from. But as I give you the downsides and upsides, if you have similar experiences, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, I kind of figure out what the right answer for me is. So first, ultra lean. It's tempting to think that this is the body fat to bulk at. There are advantages to it. But first, there are serious downsides, which is why most bodybuilding coaches do not recommend you bulk in this body fat range. First, if you're between 5 and 10% as a male, especially closer to 5, typically, not always, typically, you have not so great energy levels. Sucks for bulking. You need to train hard. Your pumps usually aren't that great. That sucks. Your anabolic hormone levels, especially as a natural, are significantly reduced in most cases. This is research confirmed, not really up for much debate. So testosterone's kind of a good thing to have around when you're trying to get muscle. And if you're so lean you don't have much of it, what are you really doing here? Because you're so lean and dry, you typically experience more joint and connective tissue problems. Your joints kind of feel a little creakier, a little rustier. Not great for bulking training, which is your hardest possible training you'll ever do. Trying to stay in this range for many people results in a chronic necessity of managing rather extreme hunger. Like someone's like, hey man, you bulking? You're like, yeah, fuck yeah. They're like, all right, you want to go out to eat with us? Like, nah man, I'm sticking really clean. Got to sort this out. You're like, all right, how are you feeling? Like, I'm fucking starving, bro. I wish I could eat 5 times my food. Like, okay, fine. It's a lot of stress to add to a bulk, so it's definitely a downside. Extreme hunger is a net stressor to your life, and to quote Broderick Chavez, stress is the great killer of physiques, and there's a lot of value to that, so not ideal. Typically, when you're lean enough, your quality of sleep will be lower, mostly because you have food dreams and wake up in the middle of the night with high cortisol and just ready to hunt or some shit like that. Definitely sucks for bulking. And a lot of times, because of these factors and some others, you have difficulty progressing in strength when you're trying to stay super fucking lean at the same time. It's not great for bulking. Kind of bad news. Now, there are upsides of being ultra lean. One is you look fucking sweet in and out of the gym. So like lifestyle-wise and loving being in the gym with whatever pumps you're still getting, it's dope, right? Everyone wants just one thing in life, to be 3% fat and in a perma-bulk at the same time. Wouldn't that be great? You got the shredded physique, you get to eat all the foods. Awesome. So if you can be ultra lean and still not have tons of these downsides, yeah, ultra lean is fucking dope. Just not going to happen for most people. You look awesome in the gym. You look outside of the gym. You look sweet. You go to the club, models just unbutton your shirt instantly and start trying to see if they can scratch their hands on your abs. Oh my God, they're so sharp. Ha! You know what happens after that? You do. I don't. That's where my parents made me turn around in the movies. And another big benefit to starting very lean is that you have a huge runway of time until you get fat enough that you don't want to be that fat, or that it has other downsides, or that it's actually time to start reconfiguring your diet and dieting for your next bodybuilding show, for example. So if you start at 5%, my God, you can gain for fucking months uninterrupted, which is really good, before you become too fluffy to need to gain anymore. But if you start at 15%, you might gain for a few weeks and be like, fuck this, I need to die. Since the addition of muscle mass is a thing that happens over the long term of chronic exposure to stimulus and food, yeah, runway's a big deal. But in this case, runway's a big deal. The analogy is if you don't experience a ton of the downsides, energy, pumps, hunger, sleep, etc., the analogy here is like that runway for you is twice as long as the normal runway, and you put your fucking big ass overloaded jumbo jet at the very start, and you get all that runway for takeoff. Great. But if your runway from 5 to 10% is littered with shitty energy, crappy pumps, low anabolic hormone levels, shit sleep, crap progression and strength, that's kind of like, you get your plane, your pilots, and they're like, all right, which runway do we take? Like, take runway 3. And they're like, that's got bomb craters in the first half of it. Look, I'm just trying to weave around them, I guess. Like, what? Just give us a fucking normal runway that actually works. Like, all right. So if you want awful, terrible training that mostly just gets you hurt and frustrated, you can get it just by bulking from a really lean point, really slowly. Or like most bodybuilders do, after a bodybuilding show, they're purposefully, for example, Coach Joe Jeffries, one of the best coaches in the world, will purposefully have his athletes gain like literally 1% of some combination of muscle and fat, a lot of it's fat, per week until they get up into that 7, 8, 9% range. Because they ain't trying to stay 3, 4, 5. Fuck all that. Nobody feeling good there. Once they get past that, then they actually start the slow bulk. But you got to get out of that area quick because a lot of these downsides are going to disappear. You want to train when you're super fucking lean and gain? Remember, you training with low testosterone. The fuck are you doing that for? Pound a couple of cheat meals, get your body fat up a little bit, your testosterone rises, and then all the stuff you gain after is going to be more muscle and less fat than otherwise. So that's the situation with ultra lean. Again, I'm not telling you not to bulk when you're ultra lean, but most people that won't be their best bet. But if you can make it work, hey, God bless you. That's awesome. Well, no, I take that back. God already blessed you with fucking amazing genetics, so go fuck yourself. In any case, all jokes. Let's go to pretty lean. This for males is 10 to 15%. Downsides. Okay, you're not Shreddy Krueger. People don't pass out at the sight of your abs, and you're not getting kicked out for glute striations anymore of the typical gym because it's just an ass and it's just a crime at this point. The police come get you. Mostly this isn't a problem, but for some folks that really love that Shredsville, ticket to Shredsville, Scott, how many more stupid analogies for shredding can you come up with till lightning strikes me? God's like, you're done. Shut the fuck up. Some people really like to be lean. And for them, if they're even in that pretty lean phase, something's missing and they're just not pumped to go to the gym as much and to work as hard because they can't see the instant results. And that sucks. And they want to be on the beach and flexing their abs. Their abs are cool and all, but they're not the super shredded abs. And so even their lifestyle kind of isn't what they want. And sometimes that is not great for some folks. Usually that's the problem. The problem is that if you start in the pretty lean range, especially in the higher end, 13, 14% body fat, for some people pretty soon, 4 or 6 weeks into a bulk that's supposed to last 16, let's say, because they started at pretty lean and not ultra lean, they're going to get a little fluffy halfway through or even a third of the way through. And they're going to not like that. And they're going to be like, man, fuck this. I need a mini cut. I need XYZ. And all of a sudden the bulk falls apart because they just really have a hard time sticking in. If you can stick in for that 16 weeks, if you can really grind it out, you're going to get great gains. But if you get so fat perceptively for yourself, if you start on, the pretty lean side versus ultra lean that you can't even make it through a bulk, you're not bulking. However, pretty lean, 10 to 15% range for body fat for males, has some really gnarly upsides. Usually, you get the following things. Amazing energy for training because you're lean, but you're not depleted anymore. You're not ultra lean, so you feel fucking good. Your pumps are usually psychotic. Pumps tend to be best when you're lean, but not too lean and not too fat. Your anabolic hormone levels are as high as they're going to be. Your joints feel great. Your hunger is in a really, really fascinating place. And I do want to make sure I make a point of this. If you're ultra lean, a lot of times your hunger is like, dude, I'm hungry all the fucking time, even though I'm bulking. This sucks. If you're super, super out of shape, mega fat, you got to stuff yourself because your body's like, bro, are you fucking kidding me? We already have body fat. Please don't eat this anymore. somewhere in that pretty lean 10 to 15% body fat range, you get a magical effect for many people. And that effect is you're hungry enough to eat all the needed foods for bulking, but not so hungry that you're stressed about having to stop, and you can have a couple cheat meals there. It's all good. It's essentially optimal hunger. Optimal hunger is defined as exactly the hunger needed to eat exactly the calories, macros, and food composition that you need for your goals. The probability you get close to optimal hunger is just much higher when you're pretty lean. When you're ultra lean, dude, fuck that. You just want to think about pizza and rubbing your body all over it every fucking day of the week. If you're much fatter, you're like, dude, I'm not stuffing myself. I can't eat this anymore. I don't even remember what hunger felt like. This must have been months ago. And that's tough to have to like raise your calories and become really uncomfortable, have a lot of stress, have a lot of digestive stuff when you could have just been leaner and the food would have gone in just fine. In that pretty lean range, many people experience some of their best sleep, and sleep is the ultimate bodybuilding drug after Tren, after Halo, after growth hormone. In any case, sleep secretes growth hormone, so I take that back. Real talk though, sleep is super, super important for keeping you leaner and making you more jacked. If you don't get enough sleep, or if your sleep is of bad quality, you get a lot of not much of those things. So pretty lean means really good sleep. Very lean usually means not great sleep, or ultra lean rather. And then much fatter usually, or not usually, sometimes for people, a bit of sleep apnea, their body's a little fatter, so they don't fit in the bed the same way, an arm falling asleep, all that other shit. So pretty lean is really, really good for sleep, which makes it a super, super awesome thing. And a lot of people, because they're strong enough, at the beginning of that process, they're not super depleted anymore, they have really fluid strength progression. You're gaining, you're eating, the fucking pounds are on the bar, and then more and more and more. Awesome. This is really good stuff. I'm not trying to low-key sell you on any one rep range or any one body fat range, but if I was, this would be the one. Yes, this is the answer. You can stop watching the video now. Just kidding. There's more to say. What about kind of fluffy? Kind of fluffy for males, for us, is 15 to 25% body fat. A big range, right? Some downsides of being kind of fluffy. One is you're not in what I would call prime sex shape. And some people just don't ever want to be in this shape. Like if you tell me that bodybuilding means I gotta get to 22% body fat, fuck that. Because the girls at the club say 17 is my maximum, and after that, no more. No, as the sex workers in Grand Theft Auto Vice City used to say, no money, no funny money, honey. Do you remember that, Scott? I would just run them over with my car or snipe them from the skyscraper. Isn't that the point of the game, is to kill as many everyone as you can? You find out who's a psycho when you give them that controller. They're like, I just want to kill. All right, no more controller. Actually, here's the controller. Don't ever buy a gun. In any case, some people just don't want to get out of their, like, saying their fuckboy shape. And there's not a goddamn thing wrong with that. Most of us lift to try to get laid anyway. So why the hell would we put the stick in our spokes to get too fat? Shit happens. It's not an issue for everyone, but for some people, it's a thing. Another one. You're now getting into the body fat level that for some people might start to lower your workout endurance, especially on compound anti-gravity movements. So like barbell rows, your lower back, that's all you feel. And you would have done more reps for your upper back, but your lower back kicked out because it's like, dude, I can't do this. It spends all day walking your fat ass around and keeping you upright. It's too goddamn tired. Squats, deadlifts, hack squats, fuck that. You actually don't have the same endurance. You're breathing ultra heavy between sets. It takes way too long to recover. You're actually stopping during some sets because you can't breathe rather than because the local muscle reached close to failure. So this could be a big downside for folks. It doesn't happen all the time to all people, but you're going to know when it starts fucking happening to you. You may have set a leg press, you're going to throw up a bunch, you're going to be breathing heavy for 10 minutes, and your gut's going, and someone's like, you good? You're like, I would be if I was fucking 10 pounds leaner. And they're like, oh, no worries. What are you doing now? You're like, I'm bulking. I still have 10 weeks of this shit. No bueno. Another one. It's tough to see changes. Like some people are really motivated by visual changes. Like my fucking delts look beefier. My fucking arms are filled out. But when you're at 21% body fat, it's like, I don't know, you kind of look like a person in 1 week and a person in week 3 and a person in week 5. It's real tough to see anything of note. And for some folks, that definitely matters and they don't like it. If you are a competitor in physique sport, if you get into this body fat range, you need 2 diets to get back on stage. You need 1 diet to take you from being a fat fuck to a normal fuck, and then from a normal fuck to a bodybuilding stage fuck. By normal, I mean ultra lean. You know, this is all wacky fitness industry stuff. And what we call fat fuck is really just a person living their best life. So normal, lean, stage. One does not simply go from normal to stage. People try it. Sometimes they succeed. Most times they fail because it's way too much diet fatigue to accumulate at one time. So you need 2 diets, which means that if you let yourself as a competitive bodybuilder get into like 21%, all right, like, yeah, what do you think, coach, for targeting the Orlando Pro? And he looks at you, he's like, no, we're not, motherfucker. You're targeting some shit in 2027 at this fucking rate. You fat fuck. I don't even recognize you. Get out of my office. And you're like, my bodybuilding coach has an office? What the hell's wrong with you, Dr. Mike? Lastly, this is a trip. When I got this idea, as I was writing, I was like, that shit does happen. See how many of you this is resounding to. When you're fat enough, 23% or some shit like that, getting fatter. So the downside is that I said earlier that you can't track visual changes because it all looks kind of the same. The bad side, point 1 to that, is that you can't get motivated by visual changes. The bad side, point 2 to that, is that getting fatter doesn't seem to make you fatter. You just kind of look the same. It doesn't make you lose any visible leanness. For example, if you have all of your abs in, like all 6 or whatever, how many you're supposed to have. Scott the Video Guy, how many abs do people have?
I have like a 12 pack.
My man. If you have a 6-pack, full cut, and you start bulking, and at some point at week 12, you start to not see the 6 and it's 4, you're like, ooh, yeah, I'm noticeably fatter. And even though I'm getting stronger, blah, 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 I'm going to make sure that like I finish this out strong, but then nice diet after, and I'm not going to extend this bulk any longer. But if you look at 23%, sort of like you look at 24, sort of like you look at 25, you can get carried away in a dreamer bulk because someone's like, hey man, how's your bulk going? Like, fucking good. Like, Jesus, I could have told you that. Fat fuck. Like, what? Nothing. You like, are you getting fatter over time? Like, oh no, man. It's kind of just fucking training's going well. So I feel good. I don't think I'm getting fatter. And it's like, of course you don't think you're getting fatter. How the hell are you supposed to tell? You go to the Sahara Desert, you pour an extra couple of grains of sand on the motherfucker. Nobody's saying the desert looks bigger now. That's you, but with body fat. So at some point, like, look, I'm speaking exactly from experience. When you get fat enough, you're like, fuck this. Who gives a shit? I'm just going to chase numbers. And then you get even fatter. And then there's more time to take away all the fat and the diet fatigue and your skin stretches and nothing you want. So the probability of getting zoinked into a dreamer bulk is higher when, you're blind enough to have dreams and you can't tell that your body looks like just an oval shaped sausage. Upsides of getting kind of fluffy. Upsides of being in that 15 to 25% body fat range. You might be strong as fuck, bro. Some people feel so goddamn, you got some cushion, you're benching, you're squatting. Oh my God. Some people just get nonsense strong. It's tough to argue against. That's a pretty good range for you. If you're your strongest, man, you're probably getting great muscular stimulus. To that end, training might be clicking like crazy. Every week is fucking high performance. Every week is PRs. Not only do you feel strong, but you're getting stronger because the food's coming in and everything. Your body does not want for anything. It's got extra of everything, fat included. So you're fucking gold. And another upside, that's kind of a low key upside, but one worth mentioning for some people, not all, but for some. When you're so not lean that you stop obsessing about your leanness, you can stop obsessing with body image, refocus your energy on improving your rep strength in the gym, put months of that rep strength in the gym back to back to back and actually gain some goddamn muscle. Why am I saying this? If you're lean enough and you got your little etches, a little abs, a little whatever vein you got here, and you get bulky enough and that shit starts to go away, you're like, well, I can't do this anymore. I got a mini cut. I got to go back down. Motherfucker, you've been massing for 3 weeks. The hell's wrong with you? Like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. All right. But if you get over the hump and you look like a human, like a muscular, fucking broad, and all the shapes are right, but there's no crazy details that you're obsessed with. When you start looking like that, you don't really care about your body much anymore. It's like when you're lean, you fucking wake up, you go to the mirror, you fucking check your abs. Later, you're at the gas station with friends, you fucking close the cooler, you fucking check your abs. You get into the car with friends to go to the beach with the girlfriends, you fucking car reflection, check your abs. Later at the beach, Stacy's like, oh my God, you look so good. You're like, yeah. Fucking, what do you think about that? She's like, yeah, I just thought you look good. I meant your abs. Like, all right. You want to see him again? She's like, all right, whatever. You do that shit all the time. You're body obsessed. And if your abs start to kind of float away from you, you're like, whoa, it's time to shut it down. Some people are like that. Scott, do I hear a fucking insect? What the fuck, bro? What the fuck? What the fuck, dude? Fuck. Okay. I can hear it. Scott, I don't feel safe.
Is it over there?
I don't know. I'll try to finish.
I think it might be in a different room, to be honest.
Feel free to leave this in. What the hell was I saying? Oh, that's right. But once you look like a human being, you pull your fucking abs up to Stacy. She's like, oh, cool. You have like a flat stomach. You're like, you mean abs, right? She's like, nope, I don't mean that at all. You're like, right. You stop doing that shit. You stop looking at yourself in the mirror all the goddamn time. And then you're like, well, I'm bulking. And what's important for bulking? Getting stronger over time for reps, period. No debate. Well, then now you can fucking stop worrying about how you look and start building the size that's going to make you look cooler later. That's a big upside, which for some people occurs right when they're in that 15 to 25% body weight range. But then there's full. Our last fourth body fat range, 25% plus. And I didn't make a cutoff because I'm saying we're inclusive. Everybody get in here, baby. Whole cast of My 600-Pound Life, get in. I was going to say get in here and eat, but you motherfuckers would eat me out of all my money. So don't eat too much. JK. Downsides of 25% plus for males. And this is, by the way, 40% plus for females. There is no avoiding hard training if you want to grow. But if you want to grow the most, your training needs to be hard and smart. RP Hypertrophy app will make sure you're progressing on track, monitoring and adjusting your workout at all times. So for all that work you're doing, you can be sure you're getting the best results. Health markers. You're just not your healthiest at that point. If you're younger, no big deal. If you're older, big deal. Worse sleep. At higher body fat levels, for a variety of reasons, people typically get worse sleep. One of them is apnea, so on and so forth. You get too hot at night, blah, blah, blah. You get your better sleep when you're at a lower body fat range. Bad sleep is absolutely not great for gains. Terrible. Sometimes you're physically hot all the time when you're that big, which just sucks, and it's another life stressor. Like people who are very overfat or significantly overfat, they're not having a good time in their own bodies. They would rather be leaner to feel better. And if you feel better during a bulk, you just get better results because stress is a big deal. Another one, your mobility is worse. Yeah, you would sink your knees to your shoulders and leg press, but your gut's stopping that motherfucker. You guys don't believe me? Watch my training videos. My gut stops everything, even when I fucking lean. It doesn't matter. It's just still a gut. In any case, my own trauma aside, if you get fat enough for the shit to start affecting your range of motion, bro, we already know. Dr. Pack and Milo Wolf fucking drove that fucking run home. The stretch, the deep stretch and the tension at longer muscle lengths is just better for hypertrophy training. If you can't achieve long muscle lengths anymore, because every time you try to do a stiff leg deadlift, your gut stops you and your hamstrings are like, I don't feel shit yet. You're like, well, I can't go through my gut. That's bad news. And that like, absolutely happens to folks. Absolutely. It's not super common, but yeah, it's a thing. And on the margins will affect you negatively. Another thing, as Mr. Menno Henselmans likes to point out, at higher levels of body fat, you have a higher level of constant ambient chronic inflammation. There are two types of inflammation: acute short-term inflammation that lasts a few days that your muscles experience, which is anabolic as fuck, and then long-term inflammation that lasts for weeks and months and maybe years that degrades your health in almost every conceivable extent and is catabolic. It is not anabolic. It is actually destructive to muscle tissue, or rather makes muscle tissue break down. And that's really no good. So if your doctor's like, dude, not only are you not healthy, you have chronic high inflammation, you're not a fucking bodybuilder. You could tell yourself you're a bodybuilder, but that's really not the case at the time. Another one is at very low levels of body fat, your androgen levels, testosterone, etc., low. Not ideal. At high body fat levels, very high levels, your testosterone is also, again, low. There's like a bell curve of testosterone where in the pretty lean range, it's best. Really, really start to get much fatter on the full side of things, your testis shit again. That sucks. That is absolutely no good. And from a sociocultural perspective, a lot of times when you get fat enough, you experience sexual dysfunction. For males, this often presents as Mr. Winky doesn't want to wake up anymore, or when he wakes up, he's not exactly as hard as he usually is, which of course you have to explain to people. You know, you gotta, so obviously you're with a girl, shit doesn't go well, you're not that hard, what do you tell her? I mean, I just go straight to lies and they go, where are girls weak in their arsenal against me? Because it's a war, right? And so I'm thinking, they have sympathy. Okay, so I'm gonna tell her that the reason I can't get my hardest is because of old childhood trauma being repressed, but because I feel like her and I are so close that I can be my true self with her, which is why my old childhood trauma is coming up. And that's why I can't get hard. And then she's in, bro. She's in love. She's like, oh my God, let's talk through it. It's great. And as soon as you get lean, you fucking, that's it. But that sucks. That whole thing, make-believe nonsense, is not a place you want to be. And for girls, another thing happens, and this happens to guys too, but more often to girls, where if a girl gets to a high enough body fat, for her, purely on psychological terms, because you know me and about 800 trillion other guys are saying, to quote my friend, hey, can I quote Marcos, do you think, on this? Nobody cares, right?
It really depends on the quote, doesn't it?
It does. It's nothing. Marcos is he's a Latino, so he's the brown peoples, and he could say a lot of things that I'm not allowed to say about race. But it's not about race. Marcos, I believe one of his direct quotes once at the beginning of Going Out was, this is yelled in the middle of a street in a busy American city with lots of fun things to do. What does he go? He goes, line them up. 100 pounds to 300 pounds, line them up. And I was like, so even though if you are on the fatter side for a girl, a lot of guys just don't care and they'll hit you up anyway. A lot of females, when they get fatter, they don't feel their swag anymore. The guy's like, you're so sexy. And you're like, I know I'm not, false, motherfucker. You might not even go out. Or you go out and the guy's hitting on you. You're like, I'm good. You're wearing some shit to cover up some shit. It's no good. Turn on the lights off and in the bedroom, all nonsense. So a lot of times you're like, what the hell, Mike? This is like a muscle growth discussion. This shit matters because how you feel psychologically is going to determine how long that bulk lasts. Imagine your coach is like, how's your fucking shit going? A program I wrote. You're like, good. I'm not having any more sex. And I don't have any friends. He's like, sweet, it's working. What do you mean it's working? Like, you're gaining muscle, right? Like, I guess, but what the hell is the price of all this? So things go better if you're not causing all kinds of awful, terrible things in the rest of your life. And when you get to full levels of fat, 25% plus for guys on average, there are tons of exceptions, 40+% for girls on average, tons of exceptions, you run higher probability of getting all these downsides, right? But the downsides are not over. I actually had to, for the first time, scroll through one entire slide to the next slide to do more downsides for being full. Your workout endurance for reps goes to hell, especially on leg training, especially on anti-gravity compounds like bent rows and squats and deadlifts where you have to hold a certain technique against gravity on the barbell. And it's just tough to train your best in that state. A lot of times your cardio fails before the target muscle fails, and then you're not even training to whatever RIR you think. Real bad deal. Also, training becomes miserable because it's just cardio at that point. You're like breathing heavy and throwing up all the time. It's awful. Another sociocultural one that does matter. People can't tell that you lift anymore. You guys ever have that? I've had that experience where people just think, like I literally, like I went to a gym with a friend, not a very close friend, went to a gym with a friend once, and they're like, oh man, I thought you were just a fat dude. I was like, because, that was a compliment because I was really strong, but they're like, I just thought you were fat. I'm like, well, I can't blame you because I really have enough fat covering my muscles that you can't tell anymore. And that sucks. People offer you weight loss advice. You're like, I'm not actually bulking. And they're like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, believe it or not, I have more weight to gain. And they're like, okay, you got a place to put it. The whole thing's off. And lastly, at the extremes of adiposity, higher and higher body fat ranges, you can get into some nasty insulin dynamic kind of stuff. Your muscles tend to lose their insulin sensitivity a little bit before your fat tissue does. So for any marginal more food that you eat, the probability it gets shuttled into your muscles is lower. The probability it gets shuttled into your fat tissue is higher. I don't have to be a fucking rocket scientist to explain to you why that's not good. This is a pretty extreme concern. It's a very small effect, but it is an effect. And like you're trying to put your best foot forward, it just gets really hard to justify bulking while you're full, unless you're Kyriakos Grizzly, and then you're immortal and a god, and no one can ever say shit to you or about you because you hear and see all, as a god does. Upside of living full and bulking through that full range, 25% plus, 40% plus for females, is that the living is easy. And by that, I mean you can eat fuck all because who gives a shit at this point? Just one little upside. That seems like it sucks. So, choosing your range. How do you choose your range? I got a couple things to say about this. First is try these ranges. Try bulking. It's a little tough because you got to get down there, but try bulking in the ultra lean range or at least in the pretty lean range. Try bulking in a few of the ranges. And I've been blessed and cursed to have a long enough career in bodybuilding / lifting to have tried it all. Okay. Maybe you want to try some. And because there's individual differences, some people thrive in ultra lean. Some people thrive in pretty lean. Some people thrive in other ranges. No big deal. No judgment. It's all you 100%. What are you looking for? You're looking for your best rep strength gains. If you're making excellent rep strength gains in a certain range, that's probably the right range for you. And also your best psychological feeling. You're not getting a ton of low hunger or restriction feels. You have relatively low cortisol and stress. It's a highly sustainable environment for you to continue to bulk. Basically ask yourself the question of like, all right, I just bulked from 9% to 14% fat. Did I like it? Could I do this again? Or was I like, man, fuck this. I need to take another range. If you want another range, try it and ask yourself the same question. Did this work? Did I like it? Do I want to do it again? If the answer is like, dude, yeah, hell yeah, this is my shit. Hey, you're good. Or it doesn't matter which range it's in, really. If you're like, nah, this clearly downsides, then fuck that. You got to switch the script. Another one is just to consider your preferences. Because a lot of these research has shown that one of the things you might believe at this point is missing from this talk is partitioning ratios, P ratios, discussions of really minutia of anabolic hormone levels and all other kinds of technical stuff. Why are we just eschewing that conversation entirely? Because it basically just doesn't fucking matter. There is no current reliable, well-mapped curve of what the partitioning ratio, how much food is sent to your muscles versus fat, or as you gain weight, how much you gain in muscle versus fat. There is no well-described database of dynamics. So if I told you, look, the optimal body fat range is from 15 to 17% because science says so, that fuck, I just make this video way shorter and it'd be like a reel on TikTok or some shit. But the reality is that research is entirely unclear. And what looks to be the case from the early preliminary research is that people gain a lot of muscle and the ratio of muscle to fat's roughly similar in tons of these ranges. You got people in the 20+% range gaining just about as much muscle and as little fat as people in the 10% range and everything in between. Because on a technical level, a lot of this is quite similar. Your preferences matter. And this is some shit, some lovey-dovey shit, but I got to say it anyway. Preferences like what? Like how you like to look in the gain phase, especially at the end. Let me tell you something real straight up. You got to be at least okay with how you look at the end of a gain phase. Because if you're not okay with it, you just won't get there. You're not going to go there. So if you tell yourself, okay, I can tolerate myself at 16% fat and I'm starting at 10, hey, great. But if I tell you, I'm your coach and I say, we got to get you to 18% fat and you're like, dude, no, then you're not going to do it. So don't do it. Because remember, there's a lot of right answers. You don't have to pick the one that you hate. Basically, you have to have like a what's too fat for me cutoff. Now it'll change, it's dynamic, it changes over time, but you know roughly what it is. Another one is, what is your lifestyle like? If you are a hermit bodybuilder macros addict, then you could just fucking lock into any one of these and just, you don't see any other humans. It doesn't matter. But if you like living your best life, then there are a couple of options you have. If you're living your best life is riding jet skis with your abs, don't get too fat. If living your best life is going to casinos and gambling and drinking and having fun and food with all your friends and smoking cigars, then who gives a fuck? Then live your best life at a fatter body weight if that's what's most conducive. You're not going to be counting fucking cigar macros I don't even know what that means. You're like, I'll take half a cigar, but the whole cigar is too much. It's too much fiber, I guess. Scott, wouldn't a cigar be mostly made of fiber? It's plants. Like you get enough fiber here, you eat a cigar. Like I did now. Okay, that guy's nuts.
Dried plants, that's even more like insoluble.
Yeah. Oh, it'll clear you up real quick. Shit. I'm going to, hey, you guys heard this here first. Start eating cigars. It'll get you shredded. Lastly, got to think about what your constraints are. If you are a physique competitor, you can't get too fat. So yeah, man, I gained my best muscle in a 15, 25% range. That's nice. See you in 4 years when you come back down off that range. It's unlikely. So even if you get your ideal gains are up in that range somewhere, it just might be too costly because you have a show coming up in 8 months. You got to bulk and then cut and then get ready for the show. You're going from 5 to 10 or 7 to 13. You ain't going much else outside of that. Or on the other hand, you're in grad school. Hypocaloric dieting zaps too much of your brain power. You're already at like 17% fat. You're still going to bulk. You'll bulk to 21 and then cut back down. No big deal. But you're sure as shit not getting contest lean because then you fail out of grad school and they don't give PhDs in bodybuilding. All right, so the hell's my PhD in? Another one. If you're at a certain level of body fat and you're like, dude, I can't bulk because I don't want to get much fat on this, there is absolutely hope. Consider creating yourself a bulking runway. By doing what? By taking 8 to 10 weeks and losing a pound a week on a fat loss diet. So first of all, 8 to 10 weeks is not that long. A pound a week lost on a diet is just not that much. It's just not that much. And then once you clear that out, so let's say you lose a pound a week for 9 weeks straight. That's 9 pounds lost. In your next bulk, plan to gain half a pound a week and stick to it with alterations. An RP Diet Coach app can help you with that. Well, whatever. Then over the course of 18 weeks, you come back to the same body weight you were. That's 18 weeks of unreal runway. You lost a bunch of fat, opened up that runway, and now you're bulking for 18 weeks. And absolutely worst case scenario is you have the same muscle at the end as at the beginning. That would be terrible, highly unlikely. But probably you arrive with a few pounds more muscle and a few pounds less fat than you started 18 weeks ago. So by doing a little fat loss phase first, nothing crazy because you can't accumulate too much fatigue. You need that shit for later. Lose 5 or 10 pounds, pound a week, and then half a pound a week gain, which is a really good rate of gain for most people. Then you have lots of time to do it in. And so that problem of, well, I don't want to get too fat is completely solved because you will be getting no fatter than you are right very now. If the first thing you do isn't bulk, but it's cut instead. You might need to do a few of these so to get kind of to your best place, but you still get to bulk on your way to your best place. Here's what I mean. Let's say you're in the 20% body fat range, but you really want to hang out kind of the 12% range. What you do is you do 10 weeks down, and then you only do, let's say, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 weeks up. Because down is a pound per week and up is half a pound per week, you end up lighter at the end of every single bulking phase than you were at the last bulking phase. So your peak body fat percent is 20% at the end of one bulking phase, 18 at the next, 17 at the one after, 15 at the one after, and sooner or later, after a few years, same bulking and cutting, you've been gaining muscle this whole time, and you've been losing fat this entire time. People think, oh, I need to lose fat. I need to get down to whatever weight I want to be lean at and then start from there. Bullshit. So if you're young and you're in the 20s and body fat percent or the high teens, you don't have to just fucking get shredded of. Fuck that. Dieting mixed with bulking, a little bit more dieting, a little less bulking, even 1-to-1. Fuck, 1-to-1 is great. Watch this. So you lose 10 pounds over 10 weeks. Then over 10 weeks, you gain 5 pounds because it's only half the gain of the loss. You get to bulk for exactly as long as cutting, but you are 5 pounds bereft of body fat that you had before. 5 pounds at a reasonable body weight, that is 2% body fat. That's a big deal. So every time you go through one of these phases, with some maintenance phases, active rest thrown in there, every year you come down a few body fat percentage points. 3 or 4 years later, you have put on tons of muscle. You didn't put your whole life on hold for fat loss, and you have been gaining muscle the entire time and losing fat the entire time, and nothing really changes when you get to your next body fat. Now you can just drag out the muscle gain phases for as long as you like because you're really, really on the body fat range. Lastly, bulking is mostly about muscle gain, but it's not all about muscle gain. It's about health for sure, and liking how you look and feel as well. Which is, remember, that's why we do all this, because we like how we look and feel when we do it. Just make sure you know the trade-offs before you make them. Know what you're getting yourself into. If you're intending on bulking when you're really lean, you have to ask the question, is that the best way for you to bulk based on the metrics that you're collecting? If you're really fat and you're like, fuck it, I'm going to bulk anyway, are you really going to last? Do you really think this is going to happen for you? Or are you going to get poor health and shitty endurance and then have to cut anyway and fuck up the bulk? There is no one right answer to what body fat you should bulk at. But there is one right answer for you at any given time. And that depends on your specific situation. So what you have from this video is not the easy way out of 17%, man, it's the ultimate. You have a little bit of information about which variables to look out for to determine for yourself, what's my best bulking range? Then you bulk, you get shredded, you bulk, you get shredded. You do these cobra forearm flexes at people, even when they don't know who you are, and they've called the police on you several times. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. See you guys next time.